Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today's Thursday, August 7th, 2025, and Canada absolutely cannot replace the United States by becoming our own best trading partner. It is mathematically idiotic to suggest that that's the solution to our problem. It is unbelievable that that's what Carney is suggesting, and I can't believe that nobody's really calling him out on it. Mexico said, no, I don't think so, Canada. We'll just continue trading with the United States and you in trade deals with the United States. We don't want a bilateral trade deal with you guys. Yuck, right? And so isn't that interesting? Usually when you send the heavy hitters like the ministers, you have something to sign. There wasn't anything to sign, and they got told and sent packing. And that's interesting to me because it indicates a level of incompetence that I had previously not been aware of. So that's interesting. Are you ready for Digital ID Day? Because it's going to be September 16th. 916 is the sustainable development goal they're going to use to roll this out. And so they're doing it on September 16th. And interesting. ID Day. Yay, let's celebrate it. And they'll be all over everywhere because the radio stations and television stations are all owned by the same people. And so is the internet, I guess, right now, too. Interesting. Trade deal rejected by Mexico. I already talked about that. Grok is curating your X feed, and we'll listen to Elon Musk sell X as the best place to advertise because Grok's so smart, it knows what everybody wants. And so that's interesting to me as well. And Nova Scotia, well, we've got to talk about the climate change lockdowns. And yesterday we kind of started talking about this, but I guess it happened just as the show was starting yesterday or really, really soon as the show was starting. And so the news became the biggest news in Canada. Like, this is an unbelievable overstep by the Premier of Nova Scotia, but it's happened before, multiple times before, 2017, 2016, a whole bunch of times in the last 10 years. And people are polarized on this. There are some people who say, stay out of the woods, they're not asking that much. And other people who say, can't you see this is just like the COVID tyranny? It's tyranny. There's fire bans, and then there's banning human activity in the woods. And the two things are different. And we need to make sure that people's rights are being respected, even with fires as part of their lives. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, Melissa says, now I'm confused. And I thought this was a really good and interesting take. Now I'm confused. I was told that climate change causes the fires we're seeing in Canada, but Nova Scotia just banned human activities like hiking and fishing in response to potential fires. So is it human activity or is it climate change? And how does fishing cause forest fires? Yeah, they banned fishing, they banned hiking, they banned everything, and it's kind of nonsensical the way they've done it. So people are upset. Now, the justification here, so Melissa is saying, I was told climate change causes the fires, and now we're banning human activity, and that doesn't sound very good. But the distinction here is the environment's changed so much, and now it's susceptible to this human activity that people that's rolling out or that people are doing. And ergo, the climate change caused this climate to be fragile and vulnerable to these arson attacks or something like that. I think that that's the justification. I think that the left wing views it because the climate is so different now. Now, if you go into the woods with a cigarette, that's a forest fire and you're done, right? And you're done. And if you go fishing with a cigarette, well, you're done. That's it, right? And so, wild. This didn't age well. This is from August 3rd, okay? So August 3rd to August 6th. August 3rd, Tim Houston, who's the Premier of Nova Scotia, says, we're making it easier and more enjoyable to get outside and explore Nova Scotia's natural beauty. This year, 40 provincial parks are getting upgrades like new washrooms, improved trails, better roads, more accessible campsites. We're investing $1.6 million. $1.6 million? How much did we send to Ukraine, sir? Across 38 parks to help make visits safer, more accessible, and more enjoyable for everyone. More reasons to get out and enjoy everything our parks have to offer. A few days later, right? Oh, hold on. Here's Tim. Oh, this isn't it either. Here's Tim Houston talking about how you're not allowed to go into the parks anymore and can't go camping. Actually, you're allowed to go camping in the parks, just not anywhere else. Here's Tim Houston talking about the fire bans and the access to the woods being canceled. Here we go.
PM today, we're telling Nova Scotians, stay out of the woods. We are restricting travel and activities that really aren't necessary for most of us. Hiking, camping, fishing, and the use of vehicles in the woods are not permitted. Trail systems through woods are off limits. Camping is allowed, but only in official campgrounds. The fine for violating any of these bans is the same as the fine for the ban on burning, $25,000. And if you're a smoker, for God's sakes, be mindful of where you're butting your butt out. If you don't and you cause a fire, we will hold you accountable.
And I don't disagree with that. You shouldn't be careless with your cigarettes. And I find it odd, too, as a former smoker, that people used to just throw their cigarette butts on the ground. And we used to just spit our gum out on the ground, too. We could throw it in the garbage, right? I don't know. It's one of those things. It's very strange. The Bucky Will says, remember when they called you a conspiracy theorist? Me in 2022. Just wait. Climate lockdowns are coming. 2025, Nova Scotia bans walking in the woods to prevent possible fires. And I didn't highlight Sean. Sean is the preacher at the center of all of the canceled shows across Canada due to, quote, your safety, right? And he says Nova Scotia, the same province that's now banning walking in the woods, threatened Sean with a $50,000 fine if more than 200 people gathered after they canceled our permit to worship in a private farmer's field. They hate freedom. And so Sean is commenting on Premier Houston's statement, and he says, commie insanity. Nova Scotia Premier bans hiking, fishing, camping, or even walking in the woods in the entire province for wildlife safety or face a fine of $25,000. And so is this the climate lockdown or not? Do you think this is a step towards tyranny? Do you get the COVID vibes from this? My lockdown is your safety, right? And your lockdown is my safety. Sean, again, says, hope you're paying attention, Canada. Every new public emergency, for example, wildfires in Nova Scotia or church services in Quebec, wink, allows the government to assert more power and control over basic freedoms. This is the same excuse they used in California in 2020. Don't buy it. And I think that he's not wrong. I get, me personally, I get the COVID vibes from all of this, but it's a little harder to see because your safety, comrade, for your safety, I don't want forest fires. I don't want forest fires encroaching on people's houses and things like that. And I'm sure that careless human activity does contribute to it. However, the tyranny that's being put on display here is very concerning. Jamie is responding to Drea, who's highlighting Tim Houston's announcement. Drea says, whoa, Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston announcing that citizens are now banned from entering the woods, including hiking, to prevent wildfires. Jamie says it's one thing to impose a fire or a quad ban, the four-wheelers, in dry conditions, but to ban landowners from hosting anyone on their forested lands for any activity, including dog walking, hiking, trail riding, etc., is tyrannical. So you can't ride your horse on a trail on private property in the woods. Here is Jeff Everly, and he's from Nova Scotia, and he's highlighting the difference between the woods and not the woods, according to the caution tape put up in the woods by the Nova Scotia government. Yeah, here we go.
Hey everybody, Jeff Evely here. I'm in Petersfield Provincial Park in the most tyrannical province of Canada, which is Nova Scotia, with my fuzzy friend Axel, where we walk pretty much every single morning. And here you can see that this area is taped off because that trail is the woods. But this area is not taped off because that's not the woods. This area is taped off because that's the woods, and there is a sign here that says trail closed due to extreme fire hazard. So that is the woods. This area is not the woods. This area is the woods. This area is not the woods. This area is the woods. This area is not the woods.
So you get it, right? And the greenery and like everything, the grass doesn't, in August in Ontario, often in Guelph, we've had water controls for a long time. So you get level 1, level 2, level 3. And at level 3, you're only allowed to water every other day and whatever. So your grass gets crunchy because it gets dry in Guelph sometimes every few years, right? We have cycles. This year's actually, I guess it's dry now. But the grass isn't even crunchy yet. We've had enough rain and moisture overnight that it's not crunchy. But some years you get so dry that the grass is crunchy to step on, and it looks kind of brownish, right? Like there's a greenishness to it, but it's a brownish tint. All of this coverage, all of this grass looks pretty green. The trees look pretty happy. Like the trees aren't looking really distressed or anything like that. I know lots of people are saying, "Oh my gosh, it's so dry out east right now, so dry." I remember growing up in dry southwestern Ontario, and forest wildfires were not this big of an issue at all. And not to say that I don't believe it, but I'm saying, man, it looks green there. Doesn't that look green? Am I missing some indicators here of fire stress and dryness stress and risk assessment here? I don't know. Maybe I am. Welcome to Kanekistan says Nova Scotia banned people from going into the forest with a $25,000 fine. Newfoundland says they will be doing it too. Welcome to authoritarian Canada. We'll talk about Newfoundland a little bit later, and we'll be looking before this series of tabs end, we'll be looking at the other argument as well, that you really should be staying out of the woods, and maybe it's the right move. But again, what do you think? Is it authoritarian? Is this a bad idea? Is this COVID-y? Or is this a good idea and really pragmatic? And you've got to control people to make sure that we don't have fires or something. I don't know. Echo Fashion says, funny how snitch lines weren't created and promoted to report arsonists. Ooh, good point. Natural Resources in Nova Scotia, says, if you see something that looks like a violation of the burn ban or woods restrictions, please report it to us by calling this number. Please remember that some people will have travel permits to go into the woods primarily to work. So leave those workers alone, I guess. Petrified COVID Parent is responding to this, and they say, it would be a real shame if everyone started prank calling this number. Again, I hope nobody calls this number and reports seeing Elvis walk into the woods. Please do not call this number and tell them you saw Bigfoot not wearing a mask. Do not prank call this number. So yeah, COVID Parent is being very, very pragmatic as well, warning you not to mess with the government. Here's Table Salt, and she says, according to Grok, Tim Houston's, the Premier of Nova Scotia's ban on entering any forest land is the second most strict land use law in the history of human civilization. Wow. Surpassed only by mutilation for using the King of England's hunting grounds in 1200 AD. You will not use the King of England's hunting grounds, and you'll not go into the woods, what we deem to be the woods. So, and don't use your judgment. We'll let you know. Lion Advocacy says, we are in the summer of 2025 and Nova Scotia is up to its old tricks yet again. It's one of the few places in the world, especially a democratic jurisdiction, that has outlawed simple hiking as opposed to fires. For your information, they did this in 2001, 2016, 2023, and 2025. And links on previous bans. So this is not new. It's been happening for 25 years. Wow, right? Color me surprised. I was not paying attention in 2001 when they started these bans. Again, this leads to the idea that this is a justified thing, right? We've been doing this for 25 years. This is a justified thing. Did it cut down on the fires? I don't know. Do you think it's justified? Tom says Nova Scotia just passed a law threatening $25,000 fines for anyone caught in the woods because apparently lightning doesn't pay fines, so let's punish everyone instead. What an absolutely ridiculous authoritarian overreach. Instead of implementing a real forestry management plan, thinning fuel loads, clearing deadfall, investing in early detection and rapid response, the government defaults to collective punishment like we're all suspects in a crime we didn't commit. Here's a thought. Fight wildfires at the source, not freedom. Stop blaming law-abiding citizens for your incompetence. But hey, why not just find the weather next? Oh wait, we already do. It's called the carbon tax. Canada proudly earning its place as the laughingstock of the free world, one authoritarian policy at a time. I'm sick of incompetence in this country. Well, I can't say I disagree. Really can't. Nova Scotia says fireworks ban province-wide as well. You're welcome, everyone, for your safety, comrade. 8:07 p.m. on the 6th of August. That's yesterday night. So they are banning fireworks now too. Here is Raven News talking about Nova Scotia, and she says, welcome to Nova Scotia, where hiking is a crime and arson is a mystery. Let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer brilliance of modern government logic. Drunk driving, that'll be $1,000. Assault someone, $5,000. Speeding like a maniac or vandalize public property, $400 to $5,000, depending on your flair. But walk into the woods during a time of arbitrary restriction, $25,000 fine, because apparently your sneakers are more dangerous than a Molotov cocktail. All in the name of climate safety, they say. Cute. Meanwhile, dozens of fires are being confirmed as arson, not accidents, not carelessness, intentional acts of destruction. And what's the government's solution? Punish hikers, demonize families picking blueberries, lock down public access to land that belongs to you. Let's be honest, the real fire is the government's burning desire to control your life. And here's the kicker. Remember when they could track 33 million cell phones without our consent during the Ottawa convoy, or trace a $5 donation faster than you can say freedom? But now, when entire provinces are burning, suddenly nobody knows who did it. Too hard to trace, they say. Nothing suspicious, they claim. Give us a break. If they really cared about stopping arson, they'd be launching manhunts, not handing out hiking tickets. This isn't safety. This isn't wildfire prevention. This is political theater and authoritarian overreach disguised as environmental concern. You don't punish the public for crimes committed by criminals. You don't fine grandmas for walking their dogs while actual fire starters roam free, unless, of course, you're not trying to stop fires. You're trying to condition obedience. So here's our message. We don't comply with tyranny dressed in green policy. Canadians have a right to the land, to movement, and to freedom, and no Orwellian fine is going to change that. So there you go. And she says, do not comply. And she correctly calls this out, I think. Again, here she is talking about Newfoundland rolling out the same restrictions. Newfoundland wildfire emergency escalates. Major access closures now in effect due to fire risk and limited emergency resources. Gros Morne National Park effective immediately. All backcountry travel and recreation is closed due to wildfire risk and limited search and rescue availability. Closed areas include Northern Traverse, Long Range Traverse, Big Lookout, Gros Morne Mountain Summit, and Fairy Gulch. Western Brook Pond, Gorge Day Hike, Tablelands, off-trail hiking, all backcountry camping. Primitive front country and Parks Canada campsites remain open for now, but conditions are changing rapidly. And then it's got more. This is not a drill. These are preventative emergency actions to reduce risk, safeguard lives, and protect emergency responders. A province-wide fire ban remains in place. Do not enter restricted areas. Do not ignore warnings. And so that's coming out of, I guess that's the press release coming out of Newfoundland. And here is more. Western Standard says, flying fish, not frying fish, flying fish sparks wildfire in British Columbia. Man, I knew it. I knew the flying fish were involved. Obviously. Flying fish were a huge problem with wildfires back in 2001. So that's what led to the first ban. Flying fish flying out of the rivers, flaming flying fish. I don't know. I have full disclosure. I have not read the article. I just read the headline and killed myself laughing. People said in the response, I thought it was a typo, and it's not a typo. This is serious. This is a serious article, Western Standard. So I've not read it though. So my credits ran out or whatever. My free ones ran out. Steven says, don't listen to these people. Stay out of the woods. So Steven is talking. He says, you should take this seriously. This is a serious ban for a good reason. It's not tyranny. It's a good reason. And Stephen says, don't listen to these people. Stay out of the woods. They smell like they're about to burst into flames. The woods do. They looked very green and plush to me. Josh says, actually, people should fight for their rights here. If the premier can ban you from merely entering the woods because of fire risk, you don't have a lot of freedom left. There will always be a risk. This is the same kind of arbitrary BS that we saw from Houston during COVID. I can't help but agree. I wish that wasn't so, but it's true. Mark Emery says, here's a well-written response to those saying it's unnecessary and overreach for Nova Scotia government to ban outdoor activities like hiking, and it's from Friends of Science, and Friends of Science is responding to the Justice Center. The Justice Center says the anti-freedom policy is extreme, violates charter-protected freedoms of movement, and makes no sense at all. And Friends of Science says it's extremely dry there, especially compared to the rest of Canada. CIFFC reports that our wildfire crews and equipment are at capacity. Neighboring Maine is also fighting wildfires. There may not be any capacity for wildfire fighting services left in the system. Lots of tourists who don't know their way around recall that in 2023, many of the road bridges for egress from cottage areas burned down. Why not ask for more details about this unexpected call by Nova Scotia? And there are people who are pushing back, and not in this thread. I thought this was the same thread, so I cut the other one. But a lot of people pushing back and saying they disagree with their take, right? So Friends of Science is taking the position this is a legitimate crackdown for your safety, comrade. And almost everybody else is saying, no, I don't think that I've seen anyway. I mean, there are lots and lots of people that I don't see on the internet every day, so apologies if I've missed it. But it's very interesting to me that almost everybody is very, very concerned about COVID-style tyranny due to risk. And there's always risk. You know what I mean? You could justify never, ever leaving your house again, right? You could become agoraphobic because there's always a risk. If you leave the house and you go to the doctor's office, you could get run over by somebody who doesn't know how to drive a big rig, right? And that's risk of that is only increased, right? And it's one of those things. And I mean, Jeepers Creepers, I've seen the video footage of somebody run into somebody, a stopped car, and they ran their big rig into that stopped car and everybody in the car died. And like, you don't know, right? And there was nowhere for that car to go. They didn't know what was going to happen. And I mean, how many times at a light do you sit there and pay attention and make sure that a car is not barreling at you at 100 kilometers an hour and about to drive over you and kill you and everybody in the car, right? Like, these things can happen. Risk is inherent in life, right? It just is, right? So you can't eliminate it by locking everything down. My gosh, we've got to let the stream go. But I mean, man, I wish we could talk about more. Mexico said no. Mark Carney's claiming we're going to build. We'll talk about it a little bit more. Mark Carney says, as we build bigger and faster, we will build Canadian. He almost says a build back better in here. And it kind of, he says, we'll build Canadian. And it all sounds staged and it's nonsense. Roy Green is responding to Mark Carney, just giving him hell. And there's multiple Roy Green responses that are calling him out for his ineffective nonsense sales pitch that is out of touch with reality. Here's Mark Carney.
We will be our own best customer by relying more.
You can't replace the United States as a customer with ourselves as a customer. We don't have the volume. I said we're less than 1/3. People were like, it's 1/10, man. We're 1/10 the size of the United States. We can't. Yeah.
Or on Canadian lumber, Canadian softwood for Canadian projects. Canada's new government has a strong mandate to get big things built faster. That means millions of more homes, major new ports, new trade corridors, new energy projects. And as we build bigger and faster, we will build Canadian, prioritizing Canadian lumber, Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum in Canadian construction.
I don't think anything's ever going to get done. I don't think they're going to start any construction. I don't think they're going to do anything at all. They're just going to blame Donald Trump for everything and then run an election on that, claiming that we're going to get things done now, for real, for really real. We'll stand up a new bureaucratic agency to get things done, and then it'll get done when we stand up that agency. The other agency we stood up before, they couldn't get things done for reasons, but this one will work. Here's Ryan. He says, Doug Ford today once again praising Carney and Dominic LeBlanc regarding trade negotiations. He then claims China wants to annihilate the United States economically and militarily, then quickly walks back the military suggestion. What a clown this liberal is. Gosh, shall we listen? Here's a little bit of Doug Ford.
The details we've been communicating, which is most important. I think the Prime Minister is doing everything in his power to get a fair trade deal with the U.S. Dominic LeBlanc, which I've always said is an absolute champion. He's been down there working with the U.S. administration, working hard, again, making sure that we get a fair trade deal. And then Secretary Lutnick had a good conversation yesterday with him. And it was positive. It was positive. But it's very clear, there's two countries in the world that have tariffs on the United States. One is China, that want to economically and militarily, eventually, annihilate the U.S. economically, not militarily, but economically. And then there's Canada, that's been a member of the family for 200 years, that have fought shoulder to shoulder with the United States, that they're #1 trading partner in the entire world